The message arrived on a Tuesday morning when Earth's orbital stations hummed with their usual business. Ambassador Helen Parker sat in her quarters aboard New Geneva Station, reading the formal summons from the Galactic Confederation Council. The words were polite, but the meaning was clear. Humanity had 24 hours to appear before the full council for an urgent matter concerning galactic peace. Helen knew this day would come. For months, whispers had traveled through the diplomatic corridors about humanity's growing influence in the Outer Rim territories. Other species were getting nervous about human expansion and their stubborn independence. She packed her formal diplomatic robes and prepared for what she suspected would be the most important meeting in human history, the council chamber on New Geneva was a massive circular room with representatives from 47 different species. Helen took her seat in the human section, noting how isolated it seemed compared to the clustered groups of allied species. High Counselor Zethver of the Zephyrian Empire stood at the center podium, his tall blue form casting shadows across the polished floor. "We gather today to address a matter of grave concern to galactic stability," Zethver announced, his voice carrying the authority of 10,000 years of civilization. "The human species has grown rapidly since joining our Confederation 50 years ago. Their expansion threatens the delicate balance we have maintained for millennia." Helen felt her stomach tighten. She had expected criticism, but the formal tone suggested something far more serious than a diplomatic complaint. Zethver continued, "The Confederation Council has prepared a comprehensive solution to ensure lasting peace and stability. These Harmony Accords will integrate humanity more fully into our galactic community while addressing legitimate security concerns of our member species." A holographic document appeared above the chamber, its terms glowing in multiple languages. Helen read quickly, her diplomatic training allowing her to parse the complex legal language. What she saw made her blood run cold. The Harmony Accords demanded that humanity limit all future expansion to their current territories. Any new colonies would require Confederation approval and joint governance. Earth's military forces would be reduced by 60% and placed under Confederation oversight. All human technological development would be subject to review and approval by the Council before implementation. The terms went further. Human educational systems would be modified to include mandatory Confederation civic courses. Trade agreements would be renegotiated to ensure human commerce did not undercut established galactic markets. Even cultural exchanges would be monitored to prevent the spread of what the document called destabilizing human philosophies. Helen stood slowly, her diplomatic composure barely containing her shock. "High Counselor, these terms amount to the surrender of human sovereignty. We would essentially become a protectorate rather than an independent member species." Zethver's large eyes fixed on her with what might have been sympathy. "Ambassador Parker, your species' youth shows in this reaction. Sovereignty is less important than stability. These accords ensure humanity's continued prosperity within the framework of galactic peace." A Vorthan merchant representative spoke up, his translator rendering his clicking speech into standard galactic. "Human trade practices have disrupted established commercial relationships. Your species' aggressive expansion threatens economic stability across 3 sectors," other voices joined in. The Keltharian delegate complained about human colonial settlements interfering with their meditation worlds. The Nexian ambassador worried about human military technology falling into the hands of rebellious species in the Outer Rim. Helen listened to each complaint, recognizing the pattern. Humanity's crime was not aggression or violence, but success. They had grown too quickly, innovated too effectively, and refused to accept the limitations that other species had learned to live with. "A council will adjourn for one standard day," Zethver announced. "Ambassador Parker will consult with her government and return with humanity's formal response. The Confederation hopes for wisdom and cooperation in humanity's decision." Helen left the chamber knowing that consultation was merely a formality. The other species had already decided humanity's fate. The only question was whether humans would accept their new role as a managed species or face the consequences of refusal. She sent an encrypted message to Earth immediately, using quantum channels that would reach Admiral Jake Morrison within minutes. The message was brief but contained everything the human leadership needed to know: surrender or fight on Earth. Admiral Morrison received the transmission in his office at Defense Command Headquarters. At 52, he had spent his entire career preparing for threats from space, but he had always imagined those threats would come from unknown aliens beyond Confederation space, not from the Confederation itself. He called an emergency meeting of the Security Council. President Susan Clark arrived within the hour, along with General Rick Stone from Terra Defense Corps and Dr. Lisa Hayes from the Xenobiology Department. They gathered in the secure conference room beneath the Capitol, where the weight of the decision ahead seemed to press down on them like the tons of concrete and steel above. Dr. Hayes spoke first after reviewing the accords. This isn't about peace or stability, it's about control. They've watched us grow for 50 years and decided we're becoming too independent for their comfort. General Stone nodded grimly. Our military analysis has been tracking Confederation fleet movements for months. They've been positioning forces around human space under the guise of routine patrols. This ultimatum was planned long before today. President Clark studied the terms again, her face growing harder with each paragraph. She had served in the military before entering politics and understood the reality of their situation. How long do we have before they act if we refuse? Admiral Morrison consulted his tactical reports. Intelligence suggests they have a pacification fleet already assembled. If we reject these terms, we could be facing invasion within weeks. The room fell silent as each leader contemplated the magnitude of the decision. Accepting the accords would mean the end of human independence, but would preserve millions of lives. Rejecting them would mean war against a confederation with resources that dwarfed humanity's entire civilization. Dr. Hayes broke the silence. There's another consideration. If we submit now, we set a precedent. Any species that grows too successful or independent will face the same ultimatum. We wouldn't just be surrendering our own freedom, but validating the Confederation's right to impose limits on any member species. President Clark stood and walked to the window overlooking the city. Millions of people went about their daily lives, unaware that their future hung in the balance of this conversation. She thought about the human colonies scattered across dozens of worlds, each one a testament to the species' drive to explore and grow. Prepare a response, she said finally. We reject the Harmony Accords in their entirety. Humanity will not surrender its sovereignty or accept limitations on its right to grow and prosper among the stars. Admiral Morrison felt a chill of fear, mixed with pride. Madam President, this means war. Then we'll fight, she replied. Our ancestors didn't cross oceans and climb mountains just so we could accept change among the stars. 3 months passed since President Clark's rejection of the Harmony Accords. The Confederation's response came swiftly, but not in the way humanity expected. Instead of immediate military action, they began a slow stranglehold designed to force human compliance through economic pressure and isolation. Colonel Sam Wright crouched behind a cargo container on Vorthen Station, watching alien security forces patrol the docking bays. His mission was simple but dangerous: gather intelligence on Confederation military preparations while maintaining his cover as a human trade representative. The station buzzed with activity as Vorthen merchants conducted business with species from across the galaxy, but Sam noticed the subtle changes that others missed. Confederation military personnel moved through the crowds more frequently now, their weapons visible and their attitudes hostile toward any humans they encountered. Sam counted at least 30 warships docked at the station's military piers, twice the normal number for a commercial hub this size. He activated his hidden recorder and began documenting ship types and configurations. A Zephyrian officer approached his hiding spot, forcing Sam to act casual as he pretended to inspect shipping manifests. The alien's blue skin seemed darker than usual, and his large eyes held suspicion as they studied the human. Trade Representative Wright, the officer said in accented standard. Your presence here has been noted by station security. Perhaps it would be wise to conclude your business quickly. Sam nodded politely. Of course, officer. Just finalizing some contracts before the new trade restrictions take effect. Zephyrian's expression hardened. There will be no new contracts between human merchants and Confederation members. The economic sanctions were announced this morning. Sam felt his heart rate increase but kept his voice steady. I hadn't received that notice yet. When do the sanctions begin? They began an hour ago, the officer replied. All human vessels have been ordered to depart Confederation space within 72 hours. Your ship is being prepared for immediate departure. Sam made his way back to his small transport vessel, mind racing with the implications. The Confederation wasn't just cutting off trade. They were expelling all human presence from their territory. This meant war was coming sooner than anyone had predicted. Back on Earth, Dr. Ben Carter worked in his underground laboratory on what the military called the Phoenix Project. The facility buried 3 kilometers beneath the Colorado mountains, hummed with activity as hundreds of scientists and engineers raced to develop new defensive technologies. Carter studied the holographic display showing their latest breakthrough, a shield generator that could deflect energy weapons while allowing kinetic projectiles to pass through. The theory is sound, Carter explained to Admiral Morrison during his daily briefing. We can't match their firepower ship for ship, so we need to find ways to make their advantages meaningless. Morrison examined the technical specifications. How long before we can install these on our fleet? 6 months for full deployment, Carter replied. But we can have prototype units ready in 8 weeks for testing. Morrison shook his head. Intelligence suggests we don't have 6 months. Colonel Wright's reports indicate massive military buildup throughout Confederation space. They're positioning for a major offensive. Carter pulled up another display showing kinetic bombardment systems. Then we focus on the weapons that can be deployed quickly. These railgun platforms can be installed on existing ships within weeks. They won't penetrate Confederation shields, but they'll punch through their hulls once the shields fail. The Admiral studied the designs with growing appreciation. Human engineers had always excelled at finding unconventional solutions to impossible problems. What about production capacity? Chief Engineer Mary Foster has retooled the orbital shipyards, Carter said. We're producing components around the clock. The civilian manufacturing sector has also been converted to military production. Morrison left the laboratory feeling cautiously optimistic about humanity's technological preparations, but he knew weapons alone wouldn't win the coming war. They needed strategy, coordination, and most importantly, the will to fight against overwhelming odds. Commander Kate Allen sat in her office at Naval Intelligence Headquarters, analyzing reports from human colonies throughout the Outer Rim. The picture they painted was both encouraging and terrifying. The Confederation had begun aggressive patrols of human space, but they hadn't yet moved to occupy any human worlds. They're testing our responses, she explained to her staff during the morning briefing. Each patrol gets a little bolder, pushes a little deeper into our territory. Lieutenant Commander Steve Parker, the youngest fleet captain in human service, raised his hand. What about the civilian evacuations? Are the colonies cooperating? Allen brought up a star map showing human settlements. Mixed results. The outer colonies understand the danger and are relocating non-essential personnel. But the core worlds think they're safe behind our defensive perimeters, Parker frowned. They won't be safe anywhere if the Confederation decides to make examples. That's why we're implementing the dispersal strategy, Allen continued. Instead of concentrating our forces to defend specific worlds, we're spreading them throughout the system. Hit and run tactics, strike from unexpected angles, make them pay for every light year they advance. The strategy went against traditional military thinking, but humanity had learned that traditional approaches wouldn't work against an enemy with such overwhelming numerical superiority. They needed to be unpredictable, aggressive, and willing to take risks that more conservative species would avoid. Dr. Rachel Kim worked from a different kind of laboratory, one filled with communication equipment and propaganda analysts rather than weapons designers. Her mission was to counter the Confederation's information war while spreading humanity's message to species throughout the galaxy. The Confederation is portraying us as dangerous expansionists, she explained to her team of communication specialists. They're telling other species that human growth threatens galactic stability. Her assistant, a young analyst named Tony Martinez, pulled up Confederation broadcasts. They're also claiming that our rejection of the Harmony Accords proves humans can't be trusted to participate in civilized galactic society. Kim nodded grimly. Which is why we need to show them what civilization really means. Prepare broadcasts, showcasing human culture, our art, our music, our literature. Let other species see that we're not the aggressive barbarians the Confederation claims. The information war was just as important as the military preparations. If humanity could win the support of other species, or at least create doubt about Confederation motives, it might prevent some members from joining the coming offensive. Meanwhile, Ambassador Helen Parker worked from Earth after being expelled from Confederation space. She maintained secret communications with sympathetic diplomats from minor species, who privately opposed Confederation policies but lacked the power to resist openly. The Altarians are reconsidering their alliance, she reported to President Clark during their weekly meeting. They've seen how the Confederation treats species that become inconvenient. President Clark reviewed intelligence reports showing the growing military buildup. Will any of them openly support us? Not openly, Parker admitted. But several species are quietly repositioning their fleets to avoid being drawn into the conflict. That's almost as valuable as direct support. The months of preparation revealed both human strengths and weaknesses. Their technological innovation and adaptability gave them advantages that larger, more established civilizations lacked. But their relatively small population and limited resources meant they couldn't sustain a long war against the entire Confederation. As the fourth month began, long-range sensors detected the first Confederation battle fleets moving toward human space. The time for preparation was ending, and the time for testing would begin soon. 6 months after humanity rejected the Harmony Accords, space itself seemed to darken around human territory. The Confederation pacification fleet had arrived at the edge of human space, a massive armada that stretched across 3 star systems. War Marshal Ketram commanded from his flagship, a vessel so large it cast shadows on nearby moons. Captain Tony Martinez stood on the bridge of the colony ship New Horizon, watching the last civilian transports depart from Kepler Station. The evacuation had taken weeks, moving millions of non-essential personnel from the outer colonies to safer locations deeper in human space. Martinez felt the weight of responsibility as he guided families away from their homes, knowing many would never return. Captain, we have 15 more transports requesting escort to the inner systems. His communications officer reported. Martinez studied the tactical display showing Confederation patrol ships moving closer to human territory. With each passing day, route them through the Centauri corridor. Our defense platforms there can provide cover if Confederation forces try to intercept. The evacuation revealed both human efficiency and the grim reality of their situation. Entire worlds that had taken decades to build were being abandoned in weeks. Children born on distant colonies saw Earth for the first time as refugees rather than visitors. Chief Engineer Mary Foster worked 80-hour days at the orbital shipyards above Earth. The massive construction platforms churned out new warships at a pace that impressed even veteran engineers. Foster watched another heavy cruiser roll off the production line, its hull bristling with the new weapon systems Dr. Carter's team had developed. How many ships can we complete before they attack? Admiral Morrison asked during his inspection. Foster wiped grease from her hands and consulted her production schedules. 43 combat vessels in the next month, maybe 50 if we push the workers harder. But Admiral, we're running low on raw materials. The Confederation blockade is cutting off our supply lines. Morrison nodded grimly. We'll have to make Do with what we have? Quality over quantity has always been humanity's approach. The new ships incorporated lessons learned from decades of human engineering innovation. They were smaller than Confederation vessels, but faster and more maneuverable. Each ship carried experimental weapons designed to exploit weaknesses in alien technology that human scientists had identified through careful study. Lieutenant Commander Steve Parker led his fast attack squadron on their first combat mission, striking at Confederation supply convoys moving through neutral space. His ships emerged from hyperspace near a Vorthan merchant fleet escorted by 2 Confederation cruisers. All ships weapons-free, Parker commanded over the tactical network. Hit the escorts first, then disable the supply vessels. The human ships moved like predators, using their superior speed to stay ahead of enemy weapons while their new railguns punched through Confederation shields. The attack lasted 12 minutes before Parker ordered the retreat, leaving 2 destroyed cruisers and 4 disabled supply ships behind. Minimal damage to our forces, Parker reported to Fleet Command. Confederation response time was slower than expected. They're not used to facing aggressive tactics. The hit-and-run attacks served multiple purposes beyond damaging enemy supplies. They forced the Confederation to spread their forces to protect their logistics, and they demonstrated to the galaxy that humans would not wait passively for invasion. Dr. Rachel Kim continued her information war from her communication center. On Earth, her broadcasts now reached species throughout Confederation space, despite official attempts to block human transmissions. The messages were simple but powerful. Humans were fighting for the right to exist as free beings, not for conquest or expansion. We're receiving responses from 12 different species, Kim reported to President Clark. Most are private communications, from individuals rather than official government positions, but the sentiment is encouraging. One message particularly moved Kim. It came from a young Caltharian who wrote, "Your species shows us what courage looks like. We have forgotten how to stand up for ourselves, but you remind us that freedom is worth fighting for." The information campaign was working, but slowly. Generations of Confederation rule had taught most species to value stability over independence. Changing those attitudes would take time. Humanity might not have. Ambassador Helen Parker worked from the hidden diplomatic facility beneath the Swiss mountains, maintaining contact with the network of sympathetic aliens she had cultivated during her years in Confederation space. The intelligence they provided was invaluable for understanding Confederation strategy and morale. The Nexians are having second thoughts about the war, she informed the Security Council during their emergency meeting. Their ambassador sent a coded message suggesting they might withdraw their support if the conflict becomes too costly. General Rick Stone studied the latest intelligence reports. What about the Zephyrians and Vorthans? They're the real power behind this offensive. Parker's expression darkened. They're committed to seeing this through. They view human independence as an existential threat to their control over galactic civilization. The political situation was complex, with some species supporting the war enthusiastically while others participated reluctantly. If humans could demonstrate that the cost of conquest would be unacceptably high, some Confederation members might withdraw their support. Captain Pete Johnson commanded the flagship, used Liberty as it patrolled the inner system, ready to respond to any Confederation breakthrough. His crew had trained for months in the new tactical doctrines that emphasized mobility and aggressive action over defensive positioning. Sensors detect Confederation scout ships at the edge of the system, his tactical officer reported. Johnson studied the display showing dozens of alien vessels probing human defenses. They're testing our response patterns. Let them see what they expect to see, but keep our real capabilities hidden. The Liberty and its escort ships conducted routine patrols, deliberately avoiding any actions that might reveal human tactical innovations. The Confederation needed to believe they understood human capabilities when the real fighting began. War Marshal Ketrum observed the human defenses from his command ship, analyzing the data his scouts provided. The humans appeared to be following predictable defensive strategies, concentrating their forces around important worlds and installations. Their fleet deployment follows standard defensive doctrine, his tactical advisor reported. They lack the experience for truly innovative strategies. Ketrum was not entirely convinced. Human behavior during the recent supply convoy raids suggested a species capable of tactical creativity. But the overwhelming superiority of Confederation forces made human innovation irrelevant in his calculation. Begin the final positioning, he ordered. All battle groups will be in place within 72 hours. The massive Confederation fleet began its final approach to human space, confident in their ability to crush human resistance quickly and decisively. Behind them, the galaxy watched and waited to see whether independence could survive against overwhelming power. Admiral Morrison stood in the command center beneath Earth's surface, surrounded by displays showing the positions of both fleets. The Confederation had more ships, better weapons, and centuries of military experience. But humans had something their enemies might not expect: the desperate courage of a species fighting for its survival. All fleet commanders report ready for battle. Commander Kate Allen announced. Morrison took a deep breath, knowing that the next few days would determine humanity's fate among the stars. Signal all ships, prepare for combat operations. The communication came at dawn Earth time, cutting through all frequencies with the authority of the Confederation High Command. War Marshal Ketrom's image appeared on screens throughout human space, his blue-skinned face stern with the weight of galactic law. People of Earth and the human colonies, he began, his voice translated into dozens of human languages. I am War Marshal Ketrum of the Confederation, Pacification Fleet. You have been given many opportunities to accept peaceful integration into galactic civilization. Your leaders have chosen the path of defiance instead of wisdom. Admiral Morrison watched from his command center surrounded by his senior staff. The alien commander's words were carefully chosen, designed to place blame on human leadership rather than the species itself. I offer one final chance for reason to prevail, Ketrum continued. Surrender your military forces and accept Confederation oversight. Your people will be treated with mercy and allowed to continue their lives under proper guidance. Refuse this offer, and you will face the full consequences of your rebellion against galactic peace. The transmission ended with coordinates for surrender negotiations and a 12-hour deadline. Morrison turned to his staff, seeing the mixture of fear and determination in their faces. Prepare our response, he ordered. Make it clear and make it final. Captain Linda Johnson stood in the briefing room at Marine Command Headquarters, addressing 500 of humanity's best soldiers. These men and women would be the last line of defense if Confederation forces reached Earth's surface. Johnson had fought in 3 colonial conflicts, but nothing in her experience prepared her for the magnitude of what was coming. The Confederation has 12 billion soldiers across 47 species, she told her troops. We have 12 million Marines and another 50 million militia. Those odds would scare any reasonable person, and we've never been accused of being reasonable. Nervous laughter filled the room. Johnson smiled, recognizing the sound of soldiers dealing with fear in the only way they knew how. Our job isn't to win the war, she continued. Our job is to make them pay so much for every meter of ground that they'll think twice before attacking another free species. Make them remember that humans don't surrender, we just run out of ammunition. The Marines cheered, and Johnson felt pride mixed with sadness. Many of these brave souls would not survive the coming battle, but they would die as free human beings rather than live as subjects of alien masters. Commander Paul Davis worked through the night in the Tactical Planning Center, coordinating final battle preparations with fleet commanders throughout human space. The strategy they had developed was risky but necessary given their disadvantages in numbers and firepower. Phoenix Squadron reports ready for deep strike operations, came the report from Captain Amy White's reconnaissance ship. All stealth systems are functioning normally. Davis marked another unit as ready on his tactical board. The plan required precise timing and flawless execution. Human forces would not try to meet the Confederation fleet in traditional battle lines. Instead, they would strike from multiple directions using speed and surprise to offset enemy advantages. Prometheus. Battle group signals all clear, reported another commander. New shield generators are installed and tested. The experimental defensive systems had performed well in trials, but no one knew how they would function under actual combat conditions. Human engineers had pushed the boundaries of known technology, but Confederation weapons had centuries of development behind them. Dr. Chris Lee supervised the conversion of civilian hospitals into military medical facilities. The casualties from the coming battle would overwhelm normal military medical resources, so every hospital on Earth and the colonies was being prepared to treat wounded soldiers. "We need more surgical teams," Lee told his staff during their final planning meeting. "I've requested volunteer doctors from the civilian medical community." The response had been overwhelming. Physicians, nurses, and medical technicians from across human space volunteered to serve in combat medical units despite the danger. Lee was moved by their dedication but sobered by the necessity that made their sacrifice needed. The Confederation uses energy weapons that cause different trauma patterns than our conventional weapons, he explained to the volunteer medical teams. "We've prepared treatment protocols but expect to see injuries unlike anything in your previous experience." Major Kelly Brown conducted final training exercises with her atmospheric defense squadrons, preparing for the possibility that Confederation forces might reach Earth's airspace. Her pilots flew the latest human fighter designs, small and fast. Aircraft designed to exploit the atmospheric flight limitations of alien vessels. Remember, most Confederation species come from worlds with different atmospheric compositions, she briefed her pilots. Their ships are designed for space combat, not atmospheric maneuvering. Use that against them. The pilots were young, many, barely out of training academies, but they flew with the confidence of people defending their homeworld. Brown watched them practice attack runs against simulated Confederation vessels, impressed by their skill but worried about their inexperience. "Ma'am, what if they use orbital bombardment instead of landing forces?" asked Lieutenant Jake Miller, one of her newest pilots. "Then we'll fight in the ruins," Brown replied simply. "But we'll still fight." President Susan Clark made her way to the secure bunker that would serve as the government's command center during the battle. The weight of leadership had aged her visibly during the months of crisis, but her resolve remained unshaken. "The people have a right to know what's coming," she told her communications director. "Prepare for a final address to the nation." The speech would be broadcast to every human settlement, reaching people who had chosen to stay and fight rather than evacuate to safety. Clark knew that many would die in the coming battle, but she also knew that some things were worth dying for. "Madam President," Admiral Morrison contacted her through secure communications. "Ketchum is waiting for our response to his surrender demand." Clark looked out through the bunker's armored windows at the city above, where millions of people continued their daily lives despite knowing that war was coming. "Send our answer, Admiral." The response was transmitted on all frequencies, ensuring that not only the Confederation fleet, but the entire galaxy would hear humanity's final words before battle. Admiral Morrison's voice carried across space with calm determination. "War Marshal Ketchum, you offer us the choice between slavery and death. We choose neither. We choose freedom, and we will fight for it with everything we have. Come and take our worlds if you can, but know that every meter will cost you dearly." The transmission ended, and space fell silent as both fleets prepared for the battle that would reshape galactic civilization. In the void between stars, human and alien vessels moved into position for a conflict that would determine whether independence could survive in a galaxy ruled by ancient empires. The countdown to war had begun. The war that would reshape galactic civilization began with a single mistake. Ensign Bobby Chun was monitoring long-range sensors aboard the human patrol ship Defender when he detected an approaching Confederation vessel. The alien ship was still hours away from human territory, but its course suggested hostile intent. "Captain Williams, we have a Confederation heavy cruiser approaching at battle speed," Chun reported to his commanding officer. Captain Williams studied the tactical display with growing concern. The alien vessel was 10 times larger than his patrol ship and carried enough firepower to destroy an entire human colony. But according to pre-war agreements, both sides were supposed to maintain peaceful patrols until formal hostilities began. "Signal the Confederation ship," Williams ordered. "Remind them of the neutral zone boundaries." The response came not in words but in weapons fire. A massive plasma bolt streaked across space toward the defender, forcing Williams to take evasive action. The human ship rolled away from the attack, its smaller size allowing maneuvers that the heavy Confederation cruiser could not match. "All stations, battle alert," Williams commanded. "Return fire with everything we have." The defender's railguns opened fire, their kinetic projectiles punching through the alien ship's shields and tearing into its hull. The Confederation cruiser had expected to destroy the small human vessel with a single shot, but instead found itself in a fight for survival against an enemy that refused to run. Admiral Morrison received the battle report within minutes through quantum communication networks. The first shots of the war had been fired, and there was no turning back. He activated the emergency command protocols that would coordinate humanity's response across dozens of star systems. "All fleet commanders, this is Admiral Morrison," he transmitted to human forces throughout the galaxy. "Confederation forces have attacked without warning. All units are authorized to engage enemy vessels on sight, defend human territory, and make them pay for every light year they take." War Marshal Ketrum watched the initial battle reports from his command ship, noting with interest how quickly human forces responded to the attack. Within hours, small engagements were erupting throughout the border regions as human patrol ships encountered Confederation vessels. "The humans are more aggressive than expected," his tactical advisor observed. "They are not waiting for our main assault, but attacking immediately with whatever forces they have available." Ketrum studied the patterns of human attacks, recognizing a strategy he had not anticipated. Instead of concentrating their forces for a defensive battle, the humans were spreading out to strike at Confederation assets wherever they found them. "Order the fleet to advance," he commanded. "If the humans want to fight scattered, we will crush them before they can coordinate their efforts." Captain Tony Martinez commanded the human battle group assigned to defend the outer colonies. His ships were outnumbered 5-1, but they carried the new weapon systems that Dr. Carter's team had developed. As the Confederation fleet approached, Martinez prepared to test human innovation against alien experience. "All ships, remember your training," he transmitted to his squadron commanders. "We cannot match their firepower, so we must be faster and smarter. Hit them hard and keep moving." The human ships accelerated toward the approaching Confederation fleet at maximum speed, their formation spreading out to present multiple targets. The aliens responded with concentrated fire, expecting to destroy the smaller human vessels quickly, but the human ships did not die as easily as expected. Their new shield generators deflected much of the alien fire, while their enhanced engines allowed them to dodge attacks that would have been fatal to slower vessels. The Confederation commanders found themselves fighting an enemy that refused to follow traditional battle doctrine. Lieutenant Commander Steve Parker led his fast attack squadron in a daring assault on the Confederation supply lines. His ships emerged from hyperspace behind the alien fleet, targeting the vulnerable support vessels that kept the massive war machine functioning. "Phoenix Squadron, weapons free," Parker commanded. "Take out their supplies and ammunition ships." The human fighters swept through the Confederation rear air like a storm, their railguns and missiles devastating the lightly defended supply vessels. Within minutes, Parker's squadron had destroyed enough supplies to cripple Confederation operations for days. Admiral Jun Liu's hidden reserve fleet chose this moment to reveal itself, emerging from the asteroid fields where they had waited for months. Liu's ships carried the heaviest weapons in the human arsenal, experimental mass drivers designed to penetrate any known armor. "All ships, this is Admiral Liu," she transmitted to her commanders. "The enemy has committed their forces to the main attack. Now we hit them where they least expect it." Liu's surprise attack struck the Confederation fleet from an angle they had not defended, her heavy weapons punching through alien shields and armor with devastating effect. The aliens had planned for human resistance, but not for the tactical creativity that humanity brought to the battle. War Marshal Ketrum realized with growing alarm that his intelligence about human capabilities had been seriously flawed. The humans were not fighting like a young species with limited experience. They were fighting like seasoned warriors who understood the art of war at a fundamental level. "Recall the third battle group," he ordered his fleet commanders. "Concentrate our forces and eliminate these human raiders before they can do more damage." But the humans refused to cooperate with Confederation attempts to bring them to decisive battle. As soon as alien forces moved to engage one human group, another would appear from an unexpected direction to strike at weakened positions. Captain Amy White's reconnaissance ships provided the intelligence that made human tactics possible. Their advanced sensors tracking Confederation movements and relaying targeting data to human strike forces. White herself flew through the chaos of battle, dodging alien fire while coordinating human responses. "Enemy reinforcements moving towards Sector 4, she reported to Fleet Command. "Martinez's group needs immediate support or they will be overwhelmed." The battle raged across multiple star systems as both sides committed more forces to the fight. Human ships darted between asteroid fields and orbital installations, using their knowledge of local space to offset the Confederation's numerical advantage. Dr. Rachel Kim monitored alien communications from her intelligence center on Earth, analyzing Confederation battle reports for signs of weakening morale. What she discovered surprised her. The aliens were genuinely shocked by the effectiveness of human resistance. "They expected us to surrender after the first engagement," she reported to President Clark. "Instead, we are inflicting casualties." They did not think possible. The information war was proving as important as the military battle. Other species throughout the galaxy were watching the conflict, many surprised by humanity's ability to stand against the mighty Confederation fleet. The first day of fighting ended, both sides pulled back to assess their losses and plan their next moves. The Confederation still held overwhelming superiority in numbers, but they had learned that conquering humanity would cost far more than they had anticipated. Admiral Morrison studied the battle reports from his command bunker, noting both human losses and Confederation casualties. 28 human ships had been destroyed, but they had taken 63 alien vessels with them, a ratio that no Confederation strategist had thought possible. The first battle was over, but everyone knew the real war was just beginning.